And the point that I'm making is that in everybody's life, at some point, there's a plan B. God is talking to us every step of the way. God is trying to show you something every step of the way. When things seem to be going wrong, that's God's way of opening another door. I am convinced that God has been directing me every step of my life.
On the Word Network. This is a new ministry which is just starting. Reverend Hood needs your help in sharing the good news of Jesus Christ and His power throughout the world. If you would be so kind as to send a donation to Nicholas Hood III Ministries of any amount, Reverend Hood will send you a free complimentary copy of his book of original personal prayers and beautiful photographs entitled The Test, The Strength, The Endurance, and The Way Out. We appreciate your support, and in this way, you can partner with Reverend Hood in sharing the good news of Jesus throughout the world. Please make your check out to Nicholas Hood III Ministries and mail it to 4535 Chrysler Drive, Detroit, Michigan, 48201.
You know why I really love Nick Hood as a minister? I watched his father do it, and he took over for the church, and he was one of us, but he really turned out to be a great minister. I know it's hard, and that's something that I know that all ministers may not be doing what they're doing because for the right reasons, but I know it's hard. I know he's a beautiful man, and we've been knowing each other for over 50 years. I believe in him. He's inspired me in so many ways to do what I'm doing and try to be the best at it. Make sure you watch Nick Hood's Ministries. You'll never be the same.
Welcome to Nicholas Hood III Ministries, a ministry of hope, spiritual inspiration, personal power guided by Christian love. May the power of God's Holy Spirit fall upon you as you sit back and enjoy today's program. I introduce you now to Pastor Nicholas Hood III.
Last week we celebrated Easter. Christians worldwide paused to give thanks to God for the resurrection of Jesus Christ. He who was nailed to a cross, died a certified death. His dead, limp body was taken down from the cross, put in a grave, a tomb, and 3 days later, he's risen from the dead. It electrified the early church, but it also confused the early church. And one of the scriptural lessons that we read in the Bible is found in John chapter 21. This is the third sighting of Jesus after he rose from the grave. And even though he had been sighted, visually by the disciples, Mary Magdalene, some other women, saw Jesus, some of them still weren't sure it was really the Lord. But Jesus had told them, after I rise from the grave, meet me in the Galilee. The Galilee was northern Israel. It's about 77 miles north of Israel, of Jerusalem. And that's where Jesus and the disciples are from. And so after the death of Jesus, in the 21st chapter of the book of John, it tells us that Peter decides that he's going fishing. And Peter was a natural leader. He says, I'm going fishing. And the other disciples said, well, we're going fishing too. And these guys are professional fishermen. It was only because Jesus called them from the fish that they left the fish. But their background was fish. Their background was fishing. And so they're filled with grief. And different people work out their grief in different ways. Some people work out their grief by going for a run. Others might go for a walk. Some people will work out their grief by going to a movie, reading a book, going to a baseball game, football, basketball game. But for the disciples, their grief was worked out fishing. And they go fishing out in the nighttime. They're on the Sea of Galilee, and which is really a big lake. But it is a very big lake. It's such a big lake, it's the second largest repository of fresh water in the whole world. Guess where the number one repository of fresh water is? Right in Michigan, the Great Lakes. And so Peter and all the disciples are fishing. The Bible tells us they haven't caught a fish all night long. Peter has stripped himself naked to fish. I've never heard about that technique before except reading in the Bible, but I guess he didn't want his clothes to smell like fish. But Peter is out there, and early in the morning is the dawn light. The sunlight is coming up at the dawn of the day. Jesus is about 100 yards away. He's on the shore, but the disciples don't know it's Jesus. But Jesus calls out to them, and they can tell by the sound of the voice that it is the Lord. He calls out to them, and he asks them a simple question: have you caught any fish? And the disciples respond, no, not yet. Jesus calls back, and he says, cast your net on the other side of the boat. And these professional fishermen do what Jesus says. They've been fishing all night on one side of the boat. Jesus tells them, throw your net on the other side of the boat. They cast their net on the other side of the boat, and lo and behold, the Bible tells us they caught 153 fish. They caught so many fish, they were afraid the nets would break, but the nets did not break. And Jesus is still talking to them. And at some point, they realize it's Jesus. And they begin to talk among themselves and say, it is the Lord. The Lord is on the seashore, and he's calling out to us. And at that point, the Bible tells us that Peter dives into the water. Now he has his clothes on. He's taken off his clothes to keep his clothes fresh, I guess from smelling like fish. But now that he's put the clothes on, because Jesus is on the shore, Peter is swimming like breakneck, and the others follow him. And they come to shore, and when they get ashore, Jesus is there. And not only is Jesus on the shore, but he has created a charcoal fire. Now, I don't know how they made charcoal back in the time of Jesus, but that's what the Bible says. He made a fire out of charcoal. The disciples gathered around, and the Bible tells us that Jesus cooked the fish. He cooked the fish. And they had quite a breakfast, a memorable breakfast, a breakfast they would never forget, right there on the seashore with Jesus. And somehow, Jesus produced bread. He took some of the 153 fish that they had caught, and he prepared the fish for the disciples. And so I want to tell you some of the lessons from this story. Number one, Peter and the disciples are filled with grief. And that's very human. It's very human when somebody dies to be sad. Matter of fact, I wonder sometimes when people aren't sad at a funeral, when they aren't sad after a funeral. But the disciples are filled with grief. And think about why they are grief-stricken with Jesus. One, they love Jesus. Two, they believed that Jesus would live forever. They saw him raise people from the dead. Jesus was the last one they thought would die. The last one they thought who could be killed. But Jesus died, and he died a real death. That's part of the mystery of Jesus as the Son of God. He died a certified death. They were there when Jesus with outstretched arms on the cross, said, "Father, into thy hands I commit my spirit." They were there when Jesus, with his hands outstretched on the cross, said, "It is finished." And then the Bible tells us he hung his head and died. He gave up the ghost. And so they were confused because they thought Jesus could not die. But Jesus died a real death. They saw him, the dead body of Jesus, taken down from the cross. They saw the dead body of Jesus taken to a tomb. They saw the tomb covered with a stone, and it looked like their whole world had ended. For 3 years, they thought that Jesus was invincible, but now Jesus was dead. And so on the third day, with Jesus being in the tomb, he comes back alive, and they don't know what to make of it. We have the story of the doubting Thomas. We have the stories of the disciples meeting Jesus. The road to Emmaus, in the closed room. They're there with Jesus, and then Jesus disappears. And they don't know quite what to make of this. And so, in a confused state of mind, the disciples make their way to the Galilee. They go home. And there are lessons from this. And one of them is that the disciples are grieving. And if there's anybody today who's looking at this program and you have suffered grief, if you have had somebody close to you die, you know that there's nothing more powerful than the sting of death. My whole family has died before me. And for the life of me, I can't figure out what did I do to deserve to be alive. My mother died first. A second brother, one of my two brothers died. Then my little sister died. My father died. And my last brother who was alive died. I am literally the last one standing. I'm the last man standing in my family. And I can tell you something about grief. Grief is hard to wipe out. Grief is something that's very difficult to deal with. But if you are a human being, the longer you live, the more opportunities you will have to have somebody you love die. And when that happens, we go through a period of grief. And everybody works out their grief in different ways. Some people grieve and they refuse to come back to church. And I've talked to some people like that. I said, "How come you don't come back to church?" And they say, "Well, every time I go to church, I remember my mother's death, my father's death." There's some people, when they are grieving, they'll start drinking. Others might start taking drugs. Then there's some in their grief who will go for a run, go for a jog, take a trip around the world. Every different person has a different way of working out their grief. And Jesus understood the grief of the disciples. And I want you to think about this picture that we read about in John 21, what Jesus does for the disciples to help them with their grief. He meets them where they are. He's at the Sea of Galilee. Number 2, on his own, Jesus starts a charcoal fire. And number 3, Jesus takes the fish that the disciples have caught and he prepares them. He cooks a meal for his close friends, the disciples. And I want you, those of you who are looking at this right now, I want you to think about how many times you've been in a situation where you have cooked or somebody's cooked for you out of grief. Some of the best meals I've ever had have been meals of grief where, somebody just on their own, they began to fry chicken. They bake rolls. They will make sweet potato pie, cornbread, black eyed peas, greens, mashed potatoes. Sometimes, they will embellish it with chicken or steak, hamburger, turkey, fish. And these are all ways that we work out our grief. And I want you to think of the symbolism of Jesus preparing a fried fish breakfast for the disciples. Jesus is feeding the disciples. And in real life, Jesus is there to feed you. He's there to feed me. Jesus came to earth to provide spiritual nourishment for you and for me. And for the disciples, Jesus is feeding them in real terms, in real time. In Jesus, in John 21, is giving the disciples what they need. He knows they've been fishing all night. He knows they are hungry. And so Jesus is feeding them. And the word that I want to leave you with today is, why not let the Lord feed you? Why not give your life to the Lord? The Lord wants to nourish you. The Lord wants to strengthen you. The Lord wants to pick you up in your loneliness. The Lord wants to be your friend. In your sorrow, the Lord wants to be your joy. In your hopelessness, the Lord wants to be your hope. And you can't receive the hope, the joy, and the sustenance of the Lord until you get to the point where you release yourself. And in releasing yourself, you allow the Lord to feed you. When I think about Peter and the disciples swimming to shore to see the Lord, the crucified and the risen Lord, it is Jesus who knows firsthand that these disciples need to be fed. He needs to nourish them. And so, my friends, that's good news for me. And through my grief, the Lord has nourished me. I have never been so sad. I've never been so lonely. I've never been so brokenhearted that I have not humbled myself to receive the nourishment of the Lord. Stick around. I'm going to be back in a minute. And when I come back, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this grieving process and being fed by the Lord.
America used to be considered a godly country. It doesn't seem to be that way to me now. And I don't mean to be disrespectful or anything, but it's so many things they're okaying for the wrong reasons. There's not godly reason. People need to really open up the Bible, the Bible, and look in it and really get it into their heart. And this, the way Reverend Hood is doing this is a comfortable way. It's not forcing anything on people. It's a comfortable way and a loving way for it to continue to move in that direction.
The way Reverend Hood presents it, you can understand it, and it makes you want to delve into the Bible even more so that you can see more, because it seems like the program goes off too fast. We need the bread of life.
We really do.
These days, we need it more than ever. And Reverend Hood's ministry on TV is giving us our bread.
Thanks so much for sticking with me today. I don't know if there are people who are just tuning in, but I'm talking today about Jesus preparing a fish breakfast for the disciples, fish and bread by the Sea of Galilee shortly after the death on the cross, his resurrection from the tomb, and he reunites with the disciples in the Galilee, which is about 77 miles north of Jerusalem. And the point that I'm making is that it's significant that Jesus pauses to fry fish early in the morning for the disciples who've been fishing all night long. And I believe that the reason why Jesus does this is because Jesus understood that the disciples were grieving. They're working out their grief by fishing, but they're still hungry. And I believe that just as the Lord paused to prepare a meal for the disciples, that fried fish early in the morning over hot burning charcoal and a little fire there by the Sea of Galilee, the Lord is out there ready to feed you and me, saying, "Come to me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Somebody looking at the program today is in grief. Somebody looking at this program is a widow. Somebody looking at this program today has lost a mother, a father, a sister, or a brother. I shared with you, I've lost both my parents, 2 brothers, and a sister. And for the life of me, I can't figure out why I'm still alive. I said, what does the Lord want me to do? And why did not the Lord take me in this process? And that's something I'll probably never, ever know. But the point that I'm making, my friends, is Jesus died to console you and me. And the Lord has been my consolation through the years. And so I don't dwell on being the last one standing in my family. I'm not going through a pity party because I'm not dead. But rather, I think about the Lord and I ask myself, Lord, and I'm asking the Lord, I'm saying, Lord, what is it you want me to do? Obviously, there's some reason why I'm still alive. And I think part of the reason why I'm doing this program on the Word Network is I'm working out my grief. Strange as it may seem. I mean, I'm not frying fish over charcoal with bread early in the sunlight by the Sea of Galilee. But this program on the Word Network is one of the ways in which, I'm taking my life to the next chapter and the next level. And it's one of the ways that I'm working out my grief. And I challenge you to ask yourself, how can you, in a positive way, deal with the death of a mother, a father, a sister, brother, a good friend, an aunt or an uncle, a cousin? How can you deal with it in a positive way without drinking yourself to death, without overdosing on drugs? What can you do? And are you willing to let the Lord feed you? And you may say, well, Reverend, break that down for me, in a real sense, not a figurative sense of figuratively the Lord feeding you, but in a real sense, what Jesus is doing, frying fish, is he is physically meeting the hunger needs of the disciples. And the point that I make it is that I believe that if you let the Lord into your life, if you release yourself of your desire to follow after sin and degradation, and in order to do that, you got to put it behind you. The Lord will help you. Somebody looking at this program right now is dealing with alcoholism, and you turn to the bottle every time you get frustrated, every time you get sad, you get worried, you get lonely, you're drinking yourself to death. And I believe that if you want the Lord to feed you, at some point, you've got to release it all. You've got to release the desire to drink, release the desire to get hung up and drunk in drugs, to release the temptation to do things that you know are not right. And where does this start? You can start at any stage of life. It's better if you start as a child, but frankly, you can start at 80 or 90 years of age. I know people, the first person I ever baptized in the Detroit River was a man who told me that he wanted to join the church, and number 2, he needed to be baptized. And I offered to sprinkle him with a little baptismal pool. This is a man bigger and taller than me. And he said, Reverend, you don't understand. He said, I need to go under the water. And when in that instant, when that man told me that, it dawned on me. I said, this guy wants to release himself from sin. He wants to release himself from the history of whatever his life has been up to this point. And, later I asked him, I said, sir, what kind of work did you do in life? And he started to stutter. I was in the hotel business. And I said, oh, Lord, what kind of hotel did he have? But he became a great member of the church late in life. And so the point that I'm making is it's never too late. I encourage you, find a good Bible-based church. What you'll learn is you'll learn more about Jesus. You'll learn more about the Bible. And from that, I would also say the other things we can do to be fed by the Lord is to, one, try to learn about the Bible, talk to people, two, talk to the preacher about what is the Bible really saying, and ask them, can they help you break this down for your life? Then number three, I encourage you to try the Bible. And what I mean by that is try the teachings of Jesus. Jesus taught love your neighbor as you love yourself. This is part of my way of giving back. And if this program means something to you, I encourage you to look at this as kind of as an extension of your church life. And I encourage you to treat this like a church. And I want you, if you're looking at this like a church, think of it the way we think about church. We invite other people to come to church, right? Yes. The church takes up an offering. And so I thank you so much for your viewership, and I'm praying for you. I'm praying for you, and I'm wishing the best for you in your own way. If you want to know more about what I do, I text out prayers to my congregation every day, and I'll text a prayer to you. Just call the number on the telephone, on the screen, leave your number and your name, and I'll send you my prayers every day. God bless, God keep you. Look to see you next week.
Thank you for watching today's program. We hope you've been blessed in a powerful way. Just knowing you took the time to watch today's broadcast is a great encouragement to Pastor Nick Hood. If this broadcast has been a blessing to you, we ask that you mail a tax-free donation to Nicholas Hood Ministries at 4535 Chrysler Drive, Detroit, Michigan, 48201.